Here at the intermission now, joined by former Screaming Eagles forward Paul Mcilveen. First, fans will want to know, what are you up to these days?
I just finished my professional career in Europe. Now I'm starting to do my firefighting and running program development hockey program back home. Kind of ages around 13 to 15, kind of that stage of junior kids. So I run with my brother, and that's pretty much what I'm doing right now.
Going back to your junior career, I wanted to know, how did you end up coming to Cape Breton? Obviously, you played in the OHL for Ottawa. How did it come to be that you came east to the QMJHL?
I ended up asking for a release, and then it took me about a few months to kind of get a release to another league, and then my agent got a call, the Screaming Eagles, and then he said, listen, do you want to go to the Q and play? And I said, yeah, of course. That's kind of how it came about, so I didn't know what to expect. Never really heard of my time where Sydney was or Cape Breton was, so it was a bit of a shocker at the start, but it ended up being kind of one of the good moments of my career.
Yeah, things ended up working out, and the big thing for you is you got to come back as an overager. There was some debate as to who the 3 20-year-olds would be that year. Did you have an idea after your first season was over that you get to be one of the 20s, or did you have to kind of come to camp to fight for that spot?
Speaking with Pascal, it doesn't say too much, so I knew I kind of had to be coming in and competing for a spot. Kind of made sure over the summer where I trained the hardest I ever did, and I wanted to make sure I could get that spot. And luckily, I did really well in camp, and my hard work paid off. And then I ended up being a 20-year-old, so I definitely couldn't complain.
Now, you look at that year, of course, the Eagles had a very long playoff run going to the third round. I know a lot of the guys still take that loss to Val-d'Or pretty hard. You had the big overtime winner in Game 1 of the Val-d'Or series. Tell us about that 2007 playoff run.
It was an up and a down. It was definitely by far best I've ever played on. And it just ended up being, we were so dominant, and I think maybe caught up to us. Got back on our heels a bit and a couple wrong bounces, and that was kind of it. And it was kind of a shocker, I think. And I'm sure most guys will say the same thing. It was definitely an amazing experience, but it was definitely one of those where you kind of look back, we should have, or what if we would have done this, but that's how it happens in it's hockey. Looking at that team, also our opponent, they were a very good team, and I think it shows with players they have in the NHL now. I always think about it, but I definitely couldn't complain. We did well, and it was for sure one of the best teams I ever played on, so I'm happy about that.
Do you have any memories of that overtime goal in Game 1 of that series?
I always have a few memories. You always remember a goal like that, so it's definitely something, especially with junior. I think you ask any pro, they'll always remember playing junior. It's kind of one of those experiences where you never forget, and I always think about it. I always go back on that season and the playoffs. It was a ride, that's for sure.
Now, you played in the minors in North America after that. Tell us about some of the highlights of that, your post-junior career in North America.
It was a bit up and down. It took me some years to mature and develop. I think one of my best years, I was out in Utah. I was playing for Kevin Colley. He's an ex-Canadian World Junior player, and it was a very good player. And it was actually the lockout year where I ended up coming back, and I was hoping to have one of my biggest years ever. And I had about 10 games in having a reconstructive shoulder surgery. So it kind of put a stop to my season, but that was definitely one of my favorite years in Utah and playing under Kevin Colley. And I was there for 3 years and learned a lot and jumped over to Europe. I have my up and downs, but it's been great.
Yeah, how did you make the decision to go over to Europe? A lot of the guys are faced with that as they progress in their hockey career. And how did you find that as a cultural experience going over there?
It's always a change. I know the first time going over there was, for me, most imports, they were all a lot older than me. I was probably the youngest by about 6 to 8 years, and it was change. I think I was at that time maybe a bit not ready for it. But then when I went back over 2 seasons ago, I guess you could say that I think it was time to get that point in your career where everyone's getting faster and you might be getting a bit slower. So it was the right time for me to go over there. And if I was going to play 1 more year or 5 more years, it's kind of the place to save your body and take care of yourself and further on your career there.
Lastly, I wanted to ask, do you still keep up with the Eagles? Still a team you follow?
I always do. I always follow the Eagles. It's that thing where, especially social media now, you can kind of follow it pretty easy. So I've been keeping up with them, and I always try to keep up with my billets. And like I said, it's that place. It was a small town, but it's like a big city. The fans were amazing. People around the team were great, and it's always something that I always remember. And so I have my jersey hanging up, and I'll always remember the Screaming Eagles, that's for sure.
People will always remember the Mcilveen head fakes coming up the ice, and people will fondly remember. Thanks for doing this, Paul, and best of luck going forward.
I appreciate that. Thanks a lot.
And that's former Screaming Eagles forward Paul Mcilveen joining us here at the intermission. You're listening to McDonald Auto Group Screaming Eagles Hockey, 1270 CJCB.